back, everyone. This is Zach Edwards with another episode of the Adventure Box Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. And here's the great thing. This is all supported by the works of Historical Conquest, who's putting together this podcast and a curriculum to go with it. If you want to learn about ancient Egypt, ancient Africa, ancient America, American history, other ancient civilizations, you got to check out our curriculum. It is great. It's a box set. It's actually a box set like this. Inside, you get a textbook that is actually full of different adventures, different activities, living books. I mean, it has like everything. Activities, cross-curricular activities as well, which is basically math, science, and other things. So you can actually study all those things at the same time. It is a great set to learn from, especially if you're a homeschoolers, independent studies, or just want to learn outside of the classroom. So, and you can buy individual boxes as well. Inside every one of these boxes come one of these, our expansion packs for Historical Conquest. So like here we have the Greeks, which will be coming up, colonial life, African history, Mesoamerica, age of exploration, and ancient Egypt. Again, today we're talking about ancient Egypt. But these are all parts of the game. They're available, one of those in every box. So as you get them, you're getting more of those as well. Okay, here we go. So today we're going to be talking about what I promised you on Tuesday, is to find out the two largest religions that are going to come into Egypt and take it over, but by two completely different ways. You have Christianity and you have Islam. Now, let's go through a little bit of this. Okay, so first off, we're going to close down some of my extra notes. Okay, so Christianity coming down into Egypt. Let's do a map first. First, I'll give you the map. So we've got Egypt right here. You have Jerusalem right here. Okay, so it is that far apart. It's actually quite close. You have the Sinai right here. That's this little jot of land right here. So between Egypt and Canaan, or what was Canaan, you have Sinai. Okay, coming back into Egypt, you have about 42 AD. So after the death of Christ, that's what the Bible talks about in the New Testament. It talks about how Mark, his apostle, his disciple, came down from Jerusalem and came down into Egypt. So he made this jot to come down. And what was he doing? He was basically becoming a missionary. He was a disciple of Jesus Christ and spreading the word in there. Now, if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, that's fine. This is all historically. All based on history. So Mark is actually, they call him St. Mark, but Mark is actually documented in history as coming down into Egypt. When he comes down here, he starts spreading Christianity. And again, it does not matter if you're Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, atheist, agnostic, or Christian. We're just telling you the history of this. So, about 42, you have Mark coming down and starting to teach Christianity into Egypt. Now, as you know, Christianity's already spread a little bit into this area. The word has spread. And so when Mark comes down, he's able to do a lot of work fairly quickly. So he comes in and starts spreading the word in that way. Now he goes up on soapboxes. He starts building churches, especially in Alexandria. And this is where he was around 42 AD. Fast forward, Christianity has actually spread all throughout Egypt. And how did it spread? It did not spread by war. It did not spread by coercion. It spread by missionary work, just people talking about it and it spreading. So at this point, the Romans were still very antagonistic. They did not like the Christians. They did not like the Jews, but they also didn't like the Christians because they worried about them. Now Christ, even though they crucified him, they were worried that they were going to actually have a revolt. And so the Christians that were down there were being persecuted by the Romans. So they had a large period, basically from around 50 AD until about 250 AD. So 200 years of persecution. And then we had, and that's during the Emperor Decius, I think was his name. And then you have Diocletian, who was between 284 and 305 AD. Now, again, persecution galore for these Christians. The Romans didn't like them. The Egyptians were fine with them, but the Romans did not like them. So let's jump in a little bit further. We're going to go into 313. You have an edict that comes down. The Holy Roman Emperor Constantine, he goes into battle, and though his wife and a lot of his friends are Christians at the time, so even though Rome is very antagonistic to Christians, there's a lot of people starting to move that way. And so Constantine has a lot of people that are basically introducing him to the belief, and he's not having it. Finally, he gets into a battle, and he basically says, if I win this battle, I will devote myself as a Christian. Now, he was going to lose. And every aspect of what everyone thinks is the reason why he said that is because he was going to lose. So might as well turn to the Christian God. And in that sense, he actually puts crosses on the shields of all of his people, all of his soldiers. They win the battle and they win. So this is the conversion of Constantine the First. And at this point, after he converts to Christianity, he puts an edict throughout the land. This is called the Edict of Milan. And the edict basically says, no one will persecute the Christians anymore. Well, there you go. So all of a sudden, no more when it comes to persecuting. Now, this actually creates a lot of different changes in this life. So, such as you have the Council of Nicaea. That was about 325 AD. What happened at the council? A lot of different things. This is where Constantine brings the bishops together and say, we need to figure one doctrine. And this is what I think we should have. So I'm going to let you guys vote on what I think I should have in this religion. Council of Nicaea comes together and they say, okay, we believe in this, we believe in this, we believe in this. One of the big ones was the Trinity. So they believed that God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost are one person. That's the Trinity. There was a large faction of them that believed that each one was a distinct individual. And each of them had a part being all one in purpose. Now, the Coptic Christians down in Egypt also had this same debate. And they actually sided with three separate. Well, at this point, Constantine's not happy with them. So you have what we call the Arian controversy. Now, this is not the Aryan nation. This is not like blonde hair, blue eyes, Hitler type stuff. No, Arian was actually a faction of Christians that believed that God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost were three distinct beings, and all of them run by God the Father. Okay, so there's this battle. And again, even though the Romans have now accepted Christianity, there is now persecution to all the Coptic Christians, all those that believe that they're three individuals. And so there's this dispute, and many people actually leave what do they call it? Mainstream or the main cities of Egypt to create their own communities out in the middle of nowhere. So with this, I'm going to show you a picture of one of these ancient civilizations of the Coptic Christians. I'll bring this up. Oh, actually, well, before I get there. So this is just a map of Egypt, Sinai, Canaan, and there's Jerusalem right there. So that would be Judea right here. So it's not too far away from Egypt. What I want to show you now is this is one of the civilizations that the archaeologists recently found that were one of the Christian communities out in the middle of nowhere in Egypt. So well out in the desert where they could actually believe the way that they believed and not be persecuted by the Romans. And so this is what a lot of those people did. Well, from there, it actually spread out throughout all of Africa. And it was actually being accepted a lot of different places, everywhere from Ethiopia down to the Swahili states. Then you have it down over in Mali, though it wasn't well accepted over in not Mali. Mali wasn't even a place at the time. Ghana. So the Ghana Empire over on the west side of Africa. So this is the rise of the Coptic Church after the Council of Chalcedon, 451 AD. The Coptic Christians reject the definition of Christian nature, and so this is basically where there's a schism between the Holy Roman Empire and Christianity, and the Byzantine Church, and the Coptic Christians. So the Byzantines are basically those that are going to be running most of Rome after this point. So the Byzantines take over. Now, here's why I mention the Christian before coming up to the next part, and why it's so important to understand this part of time. Because, again, there's persecution, they're given extra taxes to those that are Christians but do not believe in the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. And so because of this, they're laid upon by extra taxes. Now, I'm going to bring this up. I'm bringing this up mostly because there's a controversy that started about it. So the Byzantine rule basically starts around 600 AD. And at this point, Christians flourish under the Byzantine control in Egypt. And there's a break from the Christians that believe in the Trinity, and then the Coptic Christians who have basically rejected it. Okay, now this brings us up to 600 AD. What happens in 631 AD? Well, actually, no, sorry, a little bit before. What happens in like 600 AD? You have a man by the name of Muhammad who has these visions and basically sets out to create the religion of Islam. Now, what's really interesting when we start going through ancient Israel, we'll also talk about the connection that the Muslims and the Christians actually have through Abraham. So it's very fascinating when we're going to talk about this. But we're not going to go there right now. So you have Muhammad, who basically gains control. And what happens to Muhammad? He dies. So Muhammad is dead, and his generals, and now Muhammad took over a lot of different provinces, especially those that did not like him. He brought his armies and took them over. So now these armies were getting pretty powerful. It was called the Caliphate. This is actually, now here's, I'm going to probably butcher this, but it's going to be General Amr ibn al-As, the Rashund Caliphate. So Ibn al-As, General Amr? Let's call him General Amr. So General Amr decides, hey, we've got this army together. We're starting to expand. Those that we take over, we get them to believe in Islam. Let's expand it a little bit more. Let's just do it. So this caliphate goes in and conquers Egypt. So this creates the beginning of Islamic rule over Egypt. The capital shifts from Alexandria, which they took over, down to Fustat, which is modern day Cairo. So at this point, they have now taken over Egypt. Now, here's the interesting thing about this takeover. So when I was doing history, when I was studying the history, I was asked by a historian. Well, I wasn't asked. I was basically told by a historian that when the Muslims came in, when the Muslims came in to Egypt, the Coptic Christians were so excited for them. Like, we're not going to be persecuted by the Byzantines. And we're not going to be taxed by the Byzantines. All these extra taxes. And they're saying, oh yeah, this was great. This was a great a time for the Coptics. They were fully accepting of the Muslims coming in. I was like, where'd you get that history from? And they said, oh, from all these different sources. Who wrote the sources? The Islamic leaders that came in. If you did not listen to Tuesday's podcast, you need to go back and listen to that one. Because at the very end, around 20 minutes in, it's like 20 to 25 minutes. At that point, I actually talked to you about how the history is always written by the victor. So sometimes it's hard to understand what is being written, if it's fact or if it's a bias. And we have biases all over the place in our history, especially if it's written modern days. There's so many biases. Normally, if you can go back to the ancient sources, that's the best way of getting your information, the most accurate information. Newer books that are written don't usually have the older sources sourced in there. Okay, so you have the Arabs that come in, and the Arabs say, you won't have to pay taxes, according to these documents. You don't have to pay taxes. You're going to love this. We're going to be great to you. The Christians love us. Now, of course, every dictator, every organization that takes over another organization, I say organization because countries, cities, groups, doesn't matter. They're going to start distorting the history. But here's the truth. So when the Arabs come in, if you're a Christian, any Christian, didn't matter who you were, you had to pay protection fees. So you had to pay a tax to be kept safe from other Muslims. Okay, wait a second, that doesn't seem right. You have to pay this large tax so that we don't attack you and enslave you and put you into slavery. Wait, that doesn't sound right. They said, but in this discussion we had, they said, but that wasn't as big as the huge taxes that the Byzantines had. I was like, okay, so is that the only tax that they had? Well, no, it's not. We found 6 to 7 other taxes that were put into the land of Egypt when the Arabs came in. In those, they weren't all for Christians. They were either for everyone, they could have been for just the Muslims, or they could be for the Christians. But the Christians always had to pay more taxes. Now, according to the historians, nobody was forced to become Muslim. Yeah, no one was forced to be Muslim, but if you didn't want to convert, you had to pay a tax. Okay? And what did it mean to become Muslim? It wasn't exactly that you had to believe everything that they believed, but you had to live by their laws, including Sharia law. So a lot of people are like, that's all I have to do and I don't have to pay a tax? Great, let's do it! And they converted. So there's a lot of people that converted for many different reasons. Now, go to the Byzantines. So the Byzantines were Christian. They were the Holy Roman Empire. So they put a tax on the Coptic Christians. They didn't believe in the Trinity. They're going to pay a higher cost. They also had to pay for roads, land, and a few other taxes. So after going through this big discussion about taxes during this time, it was almost like, wait a second, there is no real difference between the Byzantines running Egypt for the Christians, for the Coptic Christians especially, and the Muslims running Egypt, because they were both persecuted. At least I can only assume that they were persecuted during the Arab rule, but you don't really know because they never really write about the things that they don't want you to know about. But did the individuals that were Muslim persecute those that did not? Did they pressure them to become it? I don't know. We weren't there. And of course, the writers of history didn't write it, so we don't know. The Byzantines, how much did they actually persecute them? Or was it the new writers of history who rewrote the history? It's very interesting how this all comes together. So, within this time, you actually have Islam ruling, or sorry, Muslims ruling Egypt. So they Arabanized, is what they Arabanization or Islamization. And this is where it gradually replaced Coptics as the administrative language, or Coptic, the language, with Arabic. And this is where many Egyptians converted to Islam, though Christianity still remained. So this is through the first caliphate, the first ruling class, which was again the Rashidun Caliphate. Then the next caliphate comes in. Okay, 750 AD. This is the Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid overthrow the Umayyad, which is the caliphate that rules like a lot of the area, and take control of Egypt. This is another Muslim group that decides to take it out. Now, if you don't know Islamic religion, there's a lot to learn. I'm not going to go through it all. I don't even know most of it. I just know a little bit of what I've studied. And so there's actually different groups, Sunni, Shia. There's a lot of different groups with different competing understandings of what the Quran says, of what Muhammad meant, all these different things. Just like when you had the Christians, they had the same thing. They have competing ideologies. Some believed in the Trinity being the three as one. Some believed them as three distinct beings. So, it's the same way. In even Christianity that believes in the Trinity, there's a lot of different factions of Christianity. And so, same thing goes with the Muslims during this time. They're constantly taking over each other. Now, again, what's the difference? Christianity came in and taught through missionary work, no coercion, no pressure, missionary work, sharing the word and people accepting it or not accepting it. When the Muslims came in, Islam was converted possibly because of people liking what they heard, and also possibly coercion. If there's a protection tax, I'm guessing a lot of people would have converted just so they didn't have to pay that tax. I mean, I try to get out of taxes wherever I can, but I try to do it legally. That's a legal way of doing it. So there you go. Okay, so the next thing you have is the Tulunid dynasty. This is where Egypt gains semi-autonomy, which means it gains independence, control over itself. Semi, but it's still under the Tulunid, marking it as the early instance of local Muslim rule instead of a caliphate controlling it. This is 868 AD. But after about 100 years, another caliphate comes in and says, wait. You can't have local. You've got to be part of our group. This is the Fatimid Caliphate. The Fatimid, a Shia Muslim dynasty, establishes Cairo as their capital and builds Al-Azhar Mosque. This is one of the largest. It's a major location for Islamic learning. So that mosque is in Egypt, thanks to the Fatimid Caliphate. But it doesn't stop there. About 200 years later, 12th century, so actually around 200 years, you have the Ayyubid dynasty under Saladin. Now, Saladin, you're going to learn about a lot when we do the the Arabian history. But Egyptians returned to the Sunni instead of the Shia Islam, and the Fatimid is replaced by the Ayyubid dynasty. So, are we done? Is that it? No, because in the 13th to 16th century, you have another one. You have the Sultanate. Mamluk Sultanate. Egypt becomes the leading Islamic power, known for its military and cultural achievements. Yeah. So they became very powerful at this time. So if they're very powerful, it stops, right? No, it doesn't. They get again taken over by another Muslim group, and this is the most influential in world history. This is known as the Ottoman Empire. Now we have left ancient history behind. We're up to 1517 AD. The Ottoman Empire, basically Egypt is incorporated into the Ottoman Empire, making it the end of the Mamluk rule and basically gets some autonomy to itself, some independence, again, but under the Ottoman Empire. Now, jump into Monday and Wednesday's conversations. We were talking about Age of Exploration, then we went to colonial life. Next, we're going to be going into the French and Indian War. So actually, this week, we're going into the French and Indian War. One of the reasons for the great run on sailing vessels exploring the world was because the Ottoman Empire cut off Constantinople, turned it into Istanbul, and cut off most of the trade routes going from Europe into the Middle East, going down to Africa, going over to Asia. The Ottoman Empire controlled this area. Because they controlled this area, a lot of these other groups, Spain, France, Britain, anyone that's in Europe, starts going by sea. And this is where the history collides. So Age of Exploration was actually thanks to Egypt and the Muslim conquest of the Middle East, everywhere from Turkey down to Egypt, cutting off the two big ports to get into Middle East and up through Africa, getting to the Middle East. Both of them shut off, both controlled by Muslim rule, whether Shia or Sunni, Shia or Sunni, sorry, Shia or Sunni. And so basically everything has to go through the Ottoman Empire because the Ottoman Empire takes over both these ports and all the land in between. Basically Persia is taken over. Alexander the Great tried to take over this land. It's over. Babylon took over this area. It's over. Rome took over. Greece took over. Rome took over. Now the Ottoman Empire takes over. Man, this area has been the most... If anybody ever wants to say that the United States has a history of bloodshed and horror, you got to look at the Middle East. Because the Middle East is the main hub for every empire that's ever established outside of their continent. Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East. Whether it's the Mongols coming down, they came through the Middle East and took over parts of the Middle East. Whether it's China came over, Middle East. I don't know about India. We're going to get to that actually in 2 months. Or if it was Africa coming up. Everything happened around the Middle East, which is why this is actually a big part of what we're going to be learning in the curriculums. It's a vast portion of this. Okay, so I did skip over this. This is basically Islamic conquest between 7th century and 9th century AD. They've taken over most of northern Africa. They've taken over Spain. Now, if you remember, Spain becomes a Christian nation, but they have to push out all the Moors from that area as well. They've taken over all the Middle East, including Persia. Anything that was Persia is now the Islamic State. Going into China and going into India. We're going to talk about those in the next few months. So that is coming up. So thanks so much for joining me on this great adventure. We have so much to talk about coming up. So much to talk about. Because next week, we actually talk about Israel, ancient Israel. And this is not just a location. This is actually a people that we will follow as part of this. And there's a reason, a rhyme and a reason why we do what we do when it comes to teaching this curriculum. Everything's connected. But we'll get to that point when we get there. So next week, look forward to this. Can't wait to talk to you again. This is now the end of the Egyptian civilization in our studies. Ancient Egypt. We're now going into the medieval times. But we're not going to cover the medieval times this year. That's going to be next year. We're going to go over all the different major civilizations. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great day. Can't wait to talk to you again and share more with you. Take care and have a great day. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow actually. Take care. Bye.